What's the deal, YouTube? It's your girl, Miss Honey. Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It is your girl, Miss Honey, here to do a surprise review for Lovecraft Country, which is an HBO show. It is in its first season. This review will be for episode 2. When it first aired, I did a review for episode 1, which I never uploaded. Something told me the show was going to be complicated, and I wasn't really fully sure that I was gonna commit to it because it was gonna involve a lot of time and energy. But hey, we in quarantine, right? All we got is time. This is episode 2 and it's called Whiteys on the Moon. Originally, when Gil Scott-Heron did the poem, it was a response to the first landing on the moon. Our character leads, which is Atticus Freeman and George Freeman. Atticus, we call him Tick. His nickname is Tick, and George is his uncle. And then we have Letitia Lewis. Let me say this. If you've already been watching Lovecraft Country and you enjoy it, I encourage you, since we're only 3 episodes in right now, go back and watch each episode a second time. Because I'm telling you, Misha Green and Jordan Peele do such an excellent job of incorporating our history as a Black culture, as a race of people, and as a community. They do such a good job of incorporating little nuances into the show. And so, you'll miss some things first go round because it is exciting, and it's a combination of horror and sci-fi. So there's a lot of fantastical things to look at. There's vivid colors. The costuming for this period piece, which is set in the 1950s, Jim Crow, is impeccable. It's spot on. Okay. And so you'll get overstimulated to this point where you're paying attention to all the bells and the whistles, but you're missing the little nuances. And the little nuances, honeybees, you guys know we really sup. We really sup off of the little nuances, right? So watch it a second time. Watch each episode 2 times. The first time for the excitement and for the thrill and for the wonderment of it all. And then that second episode, really pay attention to little nuances. Now, you guys know I'm known for my detailed reviews. You guys know I have an eye for details and that type of thing. But I miss things. I don't see things. And that's where we really eat down in the comments on the meat of the thing, is that you guys point out things to me that I didn't see or I didn't recognize, and you help me come from this different perspective or adjust my perspective, add to it, take away from it, yada, 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 right? Okay. So this episode opens after 1, and we have been shocked into what this is, what this story that is being told is. There are some earthly things that sort of reference dark arts and horror, and there's some, it's Lovecraft, but there's elements of witchcraft there as well. But also it's how all of those things from an entertainment perspective can be used to translate this story about racism, about white supremacy, about the oppression that African Americans, that Black folks have gone throughout the years. And so it throws this element in that makes it sort of interesting, not just entertaining or fantastical, but it then tunes this thing up to a place where it becomes very interesting. We get to see both Leti and George in their rooms, and they are in their ultimate fantasy. Now, again, we've come off of the night before, not 24 hours earlier, from this horrific occurrence where they were almost killed by white supremacists until those white supremacists were killed by these beasts that we can't necessarily per se explain, but still beasts nonetheless. They've come upon this mansion bloody, covered in blood, and tattered and torn and weary and wan. And now we see them this morning, and they are in their individual rooms, Leti and George, and they are just dancing. And we hear the theme song for the Jeffersons, where we're moving on up to the east side. Finally got a piece of the pie. Where we're moving on up. Shout out to Janet Dubois, who we lost not too long ago. Anyway, and there's these over exaggerated gestures. You know, it's kind of like getting on the good foot dance. You know, this you know, this old skippy type walk where you know, yeah, you know. And George is in his ultimate fantasy, which is a room full of books, rare books he's always wanted to read, books he has only had a glimpse or a small clipping of. He has full novels, and he is relishing in all of it, the binding of the books, the smell of the books, all of these things. And he's in a smoking jacket, baby, and he is sitting down and reading the book, and his feet are less, which, you know, is that exaggerated movement that's supposed to denote happiness, supposed to denote this sublime type energy, right? But it's over exaggerated. So it's kind of like, you know, sitting on the porch eating a watermelon, spitting the seed type. You know what I mean? Like, it's over exaggerated. And Leti is in her room, and she's got her wildest fantasy, which is shipperobe upon shipperobe, full of beautiful garments, gowns and dresses and frilly and lace and sheer and organza, darling, organza. And she is just you know, in her own over exaggerated movements, right? She is just trying on different clothes, and she take that off and she try this on, and all the while where we're moving on up is playing in the background, right? And then we cut all that and we get to Tick, and Tick is standing in his room, and he look worried. He's not in this fantastical place. He's not in this I hit pay dirt, lucky charm type environment. He looking out the window. He's assessing the situation, and he is concerned, okay? So they come out of their rooms, and when they come out of their rooms all together, Tick's room is right next to George, and then Leti is across the hall from Tick. And so they come out of their rooms, and they're kind of sort of talking to one another, and George is like, I'm telling Tick, there's some amazing books in my room. Like, it's this author and that author, and it's just, you just would not believe this. And so Tick is like, you don't find that strange? And so at the same time, Leti is like, sorry, I am late. And she shows up, and she's in sort of like this riding outfit, like, you know, this. She's got on riding crop pants. Riding crop is actually an instrument, but you know what I'm talking about, like the rider's pants, you know, fit real cute. And then she's got this beautiful blouse on, and it's got billows of fabric and tied into a bow, in this tight little snug red vest, right? It's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Her hair for this series is absolutely amazing, perfect for the time period, and just really, really a pretty style that women wore back in the day. You know, just bouncy and just manageable, and, you know, just really, really pretty. And she was like, oh, my room is filled with beautiful clothes. And he said, do they fit? And she said, like a glove. And he was like, you don't find that strange? And so just as they're about to get into it, this conversation, and talk about it amongst themselves, William shows up. You know what I'm saying? Our Nordic, resident male Nordic blonde. And so he shows up, and he breaks the conversation up and lets them know it's time to go to lunch. He glad they found everything to their liking, and he's there to escort them to lunch, right? And so as they are gathered together and walking down the hall, Tick is asking questions. He want to know where his daddy is. Is it true he's in Boston? Where is he in Boston? Give me the name of the hotel and I'll call. And William lets him know he don't know nothing about where his daddy is. He's just there to, to escort them. They say, oh, you the butler. This Tick, you the butler, right? Because Leti and George are sort of in this place where, it's like they're on vacation. Like they didn't just have the night before, right? Like where it was horrific, right? And Tick asking questions. He said, oh, no, I'm not the butler. I'm like a friend to the family. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just here to help out, that type of thing. And so Tick started firing off questions. Where's my daddy? And about Boston. And let me call him. And he's like, I don't know anything. And, they say he in Boston. But anyway, you can't call because where this land sits, there is no telephone. This was supposed to be meant to be a safe haven. And Titus Braithwhite, who was the original owner of the home and the land and the property, back in the day, he had built this lodge, and there was a horrible fire that happened. There was only one survivor that ended up being this slave. And then Samuel Braithwhite came along and rebuilt it. So the property that you're standing on now is the rebuilt property, and there's no phone service. There's no lines out of the place, no way to contact anyone on the outside from this location. And that just makes Tick even that much more suspicious. His hackles are up. If you got a dog or a cat, y'all know what I'm talking about when I say hackles. That's that hair along the spine bone up between the center of their head that raises up when they feel a type of way about something. That's what a hackle is. And so anyway, his hackles is up. And so as they are walking down this huge corridor, I mean, you could park a car in this corridor. This is a huge mansion, huge castle. And so you see paintings on the walls, and the paintings sort of tell a story within themselves. You see men that are hooded. You see symbols, triangles and hexagons and that type of thing. You see cats and snakes. You see these types of things in these photos as they're walking down the hall. And this was a scene that made me realize I needed to watch every episode twice because I missed this on the first go round. But let's move forward. And so they get down to lunch, and he let them know that, lunch is served. Anything you need is here. Anything you want is here. So on and so forth. There will be a function later on tonight because Tick want to leave the property. This dude ain't giving him no answers. He acting like he don't know nothing. He want to leave the property. He want to try to get down to the bottom of things and see what's going on. And George is kind of trying to figure out what's going on with you, Tick. Like, enjoy the moment. Like, be in this moment. Like, this is all gravy right now. We got good white folks that's seeing about us. And, I mean, we just need to embrace this, right? And Tick started, saying, don't you think this is suspicious? You got every book you've ever wanted in your room, and Leti got clothes that fit like a glove, like they know her perfect size and whatnot. You don't think this is strange, especially after what happened at last night? Now, all this while, Leti done sat down at the table, child. Leti done sat down at the table, child, and she ringing the because she got her food splayed out before her, but she need a little sodium. White folks don't be seasoning their food. This what Leti say. And he is like, what is going on with you, Leti? Y'all act like we didn't just fight monsters, beasts last night. You know what I'm saying? The wormish like creatures with the arms and the razor sharp teeth and the tongue that's like a octopus with all the tentacles. The separate head that come out of their own. Y'all don't remember none of that? And Leti's like, of course I remember. Wait a minute. What you talking about? And he realizes at this moment that George and Leti's memory has been wiped. Snatched, darling. And he is like, oh, no. we fixing to walk off. Fixing to walk off and see what's going on around here in this area. We finna take a stroll. If we don't stroll nowhere but back to that cabin where this horrific, murderous thing happens, that's what we gonna do. And so the dude told him that, they didn't really recommend they leave the property, but if you won't leave the property, there's nothing we can do to stop you, right? And so once he realized they don't remember, he's like, hell no, we finna go out here and see what's going on. And so they walked to the garage, and he thinking he got to go back and see what kind of shape the Woody is in, which is the station wagon they was driving. That Leti ended up driving through the cabin in order to save George and Tick when the monsters was attacking. He going to go recover that from the cabin because it's crashed into the cabin, right? And they actually walk up on the Woody. They walk up on the Woody, and the Woody is in pristine condition, not a scratch. And Letty's camera is on the front seat, and everything seems fine. When William show up to explain it all, kind of, sort of, not really, Tick is incensed. He's like, what the hell? How you get this? He was like, oh no, we found it on the side of the road where y'all left it. Tick is like, the hell you say? We left this crashed into a cabin after the monsters attacked us and killed them white supremacists. And William is like, I'm not really sure I know what you're talking about. I'm not really sure I know where you're coming from with this, sir. And Tick is like, oh, okay. And he take off walking. He don't even want to drive the Woody. He take off walking. So he walking a good 6 feet ahead of them, and they walking behind, and Uncle George got bad knees, and Letty is just happy-go-lucky. She's just wondering what's going on. Like, why is he so in all fire hurry, And so they come upon this town, and she's taking pictures, with her camera and just capturing the moments and that type of thing. And George is looking around, and Tick is just like, what the heck is going on? Like, they dressed like the Amish, but they also just going about their day. Like, they didn't just see 3 black people walk into town. Like, who are these people that they so used to black folks, or don't have no feeling one way or another about black folks, that they not even turning their head as if to say, who is this stranger, let alone who is this black stranger, right? And so Letty starts to talk to George about the fact she think that Tick might be losing it a little bit. They say that when folks come from war, y'all know that Atticus Freeman fought in the Korean War. And she heard that men, when they come back from war, they be going through something. Their mind don't be right all the way. And George is like, well, no, I don't think that and just as he explains it, Tick say, I don't have PTSD. They didn't call it PTSD in that time in 1950s, but I don't think. But he was like, no, I don't have PTSD. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I saw. I know that something weird is going on here. And George starts to talk and explain, and then Letty starts to talk and explain, and then they hear this whistle, this shrill whistle. Close as I can get. And Tick stops talking and looks behind him, and then he follows the sound of that whistle, and they come upon this huge stone column that looks like a silo. It really looks like a small castle, but we gonna say silo. There's this woman there, and she looks all greasy and neckish, of the red kind, and she's got 2 German shepherds that are barking. And George is like, please, calm your beast, please, ma'am, if you don't mind. Please call off your dog. Tick got questions for her, too. He pointing questions at her as well, and she is being a smarty and don't want to answer it, and the dogs are yet still barking, and so George tells them that they are guests of the Braithwhites, and at that she lifts her arm, and the dog stop barking. George said, well, are you the sheriff in this town? Are you the sheriff? And she said, what makes you think I'm the sheriff? He said, well, obviously this is a jail. You know what I'm saying? He looking at it from a black man's perspective. He looking at it from an African American perspective, in the sense that why would you build a structure like this if it wasn't meant to hold something in, right? I mean, it looked like a silo, but it don't look like a silo for grain. You know, to him, it looks like imprisonment. And so she says, no, this is where we keep this is one of our storehouses. This is where we keep things we don't want the bears to get. And I think Tick said grizzlies, and she said, no, not grizzlies, black. The black bears. They'll break into the cabins, but they can't get in here. And she said, she starts making all these references about black bears, but it really is this sort of passive aggressive way of talking about black people, because the way she talks about the bears is in this disparaging way, like they're really animals. They're smart, but not really. They're dumb. They seem like they're smart, but they're really dumb. Or they think they're clever, but they're really stupid, and just all of these things. And so it's clear to them that she's no friend, and she's no friend. And so she opens the door to the structure and lets them see in, and there's pig carcasses hanging. Like, she tells them, you all don't seem like the type of guests that the Braithwhites would have. And y'all best hurry back now before the sun goes down. They all decide to head back. And at the time that we see them heading back through the woods, it has gotten significantly darker. It's just a little beyond dusk, right? So it's not lit at all. And they're walking through the woods, and then there's this fog, but we can see the sun sort of, not the sun, the moon sort of in the background hanging like a diamond almost, and it's sort of illuminating things. They're walking and they're talking, and then George, it thinks to himself, wait a minute, I remember a story now that your mama told me. And Tick said, wait a minute, mama never really talked about her past. Now they're there to find Tick's daddy, right? Montrose, which is George's brother. But also there's this idea that Montrose disappeared because he was on the hunt for this birthright that Dora, who is Tick's mom, always talked about. More specifically, George remembers that Dora talked about Hannah. Hannah is the slave, the only surviving member of the original lodge, which was Titus Braithwhite's lodge. Tick is like, wait a minute, that's the birthright Daddy wrote about. He said, yeah, but Hannah escaped the fire. And when she escaped the fire, she was pregnant. And so at the very moment that Leti sort of references out loud that, wow, for her to walk through these very same woods after a fire pregnant, she must have been a strong woman. At the same moment, we hear the ground just being torn up, and this mound of dirt and rolling towards them. And they are in the center, and behind them a mound of dirt rolls up, and in front of them a mound of dirt rolls up, and out comes these creatures that we had seen the night before, the ones that Leti and George don't remember. And Leti immediately begins screaming because it is horrific. It's shocking. These creatures, which we know their name is the Shogoffs, okay? But still, to see them in their full regalia come up out of the ground with these arms and these feet, and they're like this, like I said, like this worm-like creature, and then this huge worm-like head, and they got razor-sharp teeth spanning the entire circumference of their mouth, and they open, and inside is another creature that's, instead of lips, it's got tentacles like an octopus, and they're flipping in and out of the second mouth, second head, and then behind that razor sharp bloody teeth, and they're screeching like it's a lot. And they're huge. They're looming over them. And they're frozen. Creatures are like the watchdogs. They're like the watchdogs for the entire property. And so then we hear this shrill of a whistle, this huge whistle, and up on a white horse. Okay, catch the symbolism, children. Up on a white horse rides Christine, who has this Christine Braithwhite. Now, she is Samuel Braithwhite's daughter, who, Samuel is is the current owner of this lodge, of this place, in the Braithwhite line. And I don't know if he just didn't have sons, or if he had only her as a daughter, but she rides up on a white horse. Catch the symbolism, right? Your white savior rides up on a white horse, right? And she's got this same long Nordic, Swedish blonde hair. And she's also the same person that sort of saved them when they were being chased out of Somerville, the sundown town that was full of trolls. Y'all go back and check episode 1, my review for episode 1. And so now she's riding up, and she also got this white woman with her, the one with the dogs, with the vicious dog, the one with the neck that's red. She's there with the whistle. I said to myself, y'all need to get y'all a whistle. Y'all need to get y'all one of them whistles. If y'all can get y'all hand on one of them whistles, y'all done did something. Y'all need to get y'all one of them whistles. That's all I'm going to say about that. Sidebar. So, anywho, so she blows the whistle, and the creatures don't go back underground where they came. They instead just turn and run off. Same thing they did at the cabin, just turn and run, right? Now, remember, this woman controls the vicious dogs just by lifting her hand, and they stop. And this whistle stops these creatures, and they turn and they run off, right? And George says, "Why are we covered in dirt?" And Leti was like, "I don't know." And Tick is like, "What the hell? Y'all didn't see that either? Y'all didn't remember that either?" That's what he thinking. He don't say it. Take George and Leti back to their room. Take the younger Freeman to my father's lab. And so he goes to the lab, and they go to their rooms. Now, we're going to talk about them, but first let's talk about Tick. Now, Tick walks into the lab, and he sees a man. At first glance, it looks like the man is in some type of surgery, but the person that's doing the surgery, the doctor, so to speak, is in this hooded cloak. And it's a dark, rich purple and black hooded cloak. And it's got symbols on the hood. And the hood is a point. It's not a white hood. It's a purple hood. Okay? Different. Still a hood, but different. It's got symbols here and on the chest. It kind of looks like a preacher's robe or a choir robe. It's got this ribbon stripping down the front. And in the center of that, it's got some more symbols, right? And those symbols are very similar to the symbols that we see in the paintings. And when we look, we see that the man has reached inside of Samuel Braithwhite, who's the patient on the table. He's reaching inside, and it's bloody. You see him come out with a huge chunk of quivering liver, and this is Samuel's liver. And then he takes it and puts it on a tray, and we pause and we cut to Leti and to George. And George's specialty is not only reasoning, but he is a scholar. A scholar and a gentleman. And he begins to reason with himself, and he sort of recaps and researches, this is what he does best. And he's thinking about all the stuff that he knows for sure, which is what Tick Mama told him. If Tick is related, is the last heir, then Montrose was just bait. this whole thing wasn't to get Montrose here. We're not here to save Montrose. We think we're here to save Montrose, but we were lured here. This is what he's thinking to himself. There's a book on the shelf and on the borderlands. Borderlands, that means it's on the border. It sits on the border between one thing and another thing, right? So let's just put a pin in that. We probably gonna talk about that in the upcoming episodes, but put a pin in that nonetheless. Okay, and so he goes to pull this book off of the shelf, and when he tilts it and pulls it out, he hears mechanism, not a squeaking. He hears mechanisms. Okay, mechanism. It's not it's not that. It's mechanisms. We can hear the mechanical parts whirring and churring in the background to open the door. And I only mention this because it speaks to the depth of the entrapment, right? In my mind, it speaks to the depth of the entrapment itself. And so it opens up with this, whirring and ticking and, it opens up. And he goes in, and when it's not this dark corridor, it's not this behind the walls type thing. It doesn't lead down to this dungeon. Instead, it leads to a great hall full of books. So he's looking around like, what is this? I don't understand it. He looks over on a side table and he sees two things, okay? He sees a magnifying glass. Anytime you see a magnifying glass anywhere, a Scooby-Doo cartoon anywhere, it means there's fine print somewhere. Are you there? Okay, yeah, all right. So we see this magnifying glass, and right next to the magnifying glass is a very thin book. And that book is called Bylaws and Precepts of the Order of the Ancient Dawn. And he picks it up and he opens it, and then we cut back to Tick. Okay. And so Tick is standing there. Christina is there, and she's off to the side making herself a drink and taking a swig and kind of rolling her eyes a little bit as this man is taking a chunk of liver out of her daddy. A chunk of the daddy's liver. Now, I believe the liver is one of them organs that can rejuvenate itself. Correct me if I'm wrong down below, but a chunk of the liver nonetheless. And so now by this time, the guy is sewing it shut, with these giant sutures, giant black sutures. And he walks out with his tools and the tray and the chunk of liver. He walks out past Tick, and Tick's got this energy like, what? Why are you walking up on me with this hood and this liver on this tray? The guy walks right past, not a word. Now, in this moment, he's not talking to Tick. It's a power move, and it's dismissive. He's talking to Christina, but he's talking about Tick, and he says he's darker than I expected, as he swings his legs off the table and stands up, right? And he walks over to this painting, and it's this painting with all different types of animals in it. And there's a small house in the painting, and it's green pastures, but it's lots and lots of animals everywhere in the painting. And this is his favorite painting. And the picture references Genesis 2:19, where God talks about how Adam named everything and put everything in its place and that type of thing. See, you have to realize they're on to Tick. They know that Tick is on to them, I should say. They know he has questions. For whatever reason, I don't know if he cannot have his memory wiped for whatever reason, or what, but the other two have had their memory wiped now for a second time, where Tick is in full awareness of what's going on. And they know they got to go ahead and break this thing down for him, or at least, kind of pull his coattail a little bit and let him know this what's going on. Like, not like details, but like this what it is. This what it is. Not, you got a choice type of way. Let me just inform you. No. No. It's in a this what it is type of way, right? And so he asked, what did Adam do? And he put everything in its place. Now, here's a moment, right? Because once again, it's about this idea that black folks have to stay in their place. Once you get labeled, once you get categorized, that's the category. That's the category you're in. And it's deemed by what we say. What we say your category is, that's what you are. What your lane is, that's what it is. Your place is, that's all that it will ever be. You might as well go ahead and just accept that, because as Adam, first man, this was his job. This was his contribution to all of creation, and therefore in essence is supposed to make him like the superior being. And there's this reference to this superiority that Adam must have had. But Christina is at the same time, she has gotten up and she is trying to help him, sort of get himself buttoned up after his surgery, and she begins to sort of belittle Eve. But the way she does it in a way is kind of disgusting. This is the first time we kind of see where Christina seems like she's with her daddy, but what she's saying is, even though it's the expected language that she's supposed to have about the subject matter, it seems like she's siding with her daddy. She's kind of being sarcastic. This is conversation she's heard. She knows that this is what is expected. She knows that she's not supposed to express this idea of feminism, or the fact that she can do just as much or more than what any man can do. She can't do all that. She's got to stay in this humble place and play it like Eve would ish, and she co-sign all that, right? Samuel Braithwhite says he finds the Bible story within itself, as it's told, as we heard it, kind of pedestrian. He says, but the parable is useful. And when he says that, we know that for me really means that the parable is useful because it has a lot of symbolism that would lead an individual who is not a deep thinker, an individual who is not in a place where they can peel back the layers, to submit to the story as if it is, for lack of a better term, the gospel truth. And he says to himself, I am Adam. So you are this superior being. You are this pinnacle, this demigod that names and labels and categorizes and puts everyone in their place. Lets everyone know what their place is. And he said he wants to return to paradise, this nirvana. Okay. And my daughter thinks that you, Tick, can help me with that. No, you, Tick, said, listen, where is my daddy? I want to know where my daddy is. And Samuel Braithwhite, he goes ahead and he dismisses that conversation. We see where Tick and Christina are walking to his room. Father's going to have a bunch of people come. Other members of the lodge are coming later that evening, and he's expected to be at this event. And he's like, why bother? She's like, look, he may have seemed feeble and frail, but he's far from it. It may do you some good to make friends. And Chick say, I don't need no more friends. And she said, well, evidently the friends you got think you might be crazy. And just as he gets in the doorway and he hears her say this, he spins around. Now he's still in the doorway. The door was not closed, but he's just beyond the frame of the door. He is like, look, it's because you put a spell on them. And she was like, oh, well, how vague can you be? This the game. That divisiveness. Well, evidently, your friends, the people you think your friends, think you crazy. Divisiveness, right? She sort of poo-poos his feelings, and he says, a spell, okay? You put a spell on them. I'm just gonna say it. You put a spell on them. I don't care how crazy it sounds. I know what you did. You put a spell on them. Point blank, period. Not stupid. Just like any other KKK, a white supremacist. And she was like, KKK, we would never. My father would never be caught fraternizing with the KKK because they're too poor. Tick said, fine. You want to be my friend? She said, wait a minute, haven't I done enough? Remember Somerville? Remember I saved you all from missing sundown and getting caught by the sheriff? Huh? What I did last night for y'all when I called off the guard dogs, the Shogoffs, and kept them from eating your face off? That wasn't enough. And he said, remove the spell. If you want to be my friend, you want to show yourself you my friend, remove the spell from Leti and Uncle George. And then she says, fine, done. And when she says that, we hear Leti scream, ah! It all comes flooding back to her. The night before, the snatching of the head, the snatching of the arm, the running through the woods in terror, these beasts breathing down your neck, the shotguns, the bloodiness, the fact that she had to run through the woods and jump into her vehicle and drive like a bat out of hell into the side of this cabin to save her family and her friends. She comes back and we hear George, oh, and muffled, and Tick wants to run. He wants to run to Leti and run to his uncle, and they talk about it. But as he goes to leave out of the door, bloop, it's this invisible barrier. Okay? It's got a little wiggle to it. Like if you touch it, it bloop, 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 buckles. But it's invisible. Okay? He's blocked in. He realizes he couldn't leave there that night, in that moment, if he wanted to. So at the moment that Tick realizes that he can't run and help his friends, the door slams shut. And up runs this little boy in the hallway. Miss Braithwhite, it's time. And so we cut back to Christina running across this lawn and into the great stone tower, which we perceive to be a jail. She runs in and there's this cow there, and the man says that she's having a hard time. It's breached. And we think, oh, okay, so she's just a regular farmer type girl, like Southern girl, and she's going to help this cow deliver this calf, right? And there's a woman up front, and they're surrounded by these Amish looking people with their head tied up, and they're like, pull, just pull. And she reaches in, rolls her sleeves up, with her Nordic blonde hair. She's here to, once again, be the hero, right? And reaches, selflessly into this cow's uterus, and she pulls, pull, and she pulls, and bloop, out pops a baby slug. Not a calf, which is a baby cow, but a baby vampire worm slug. Okay, these creatures that we see looming the scene, a couple of scenes earlier, those are the adults, or the adolescents, if you will. This is just the baby newborn, and she is holding it, and she is nuzzling it, and she is loving on it like it's a newborn baby. Oh, just a beautiful little angel. Have you ever seen anything more perfect, darling? And the man who's standing there, he was like, have you ever done this before? You've done this before? And she said, no, it's my first time. I was like, what in the hell is going on here? Okay. And so we go back to the bedrooms, right? We have Leti in her room, and Leti hears a knock at the door, and she goes to the door, and there is Tick, right? And Tick comes in, and she's just like, Tick, I remember everything that's going on. She was like, it's horrible. And he was like, I know. And he gets to calm her down. And she looks up, and she looks at this painting, and it's this painting of like Adam and Eve, this old time painting. So they're not all cut and all of that, Eve is kind of plump and sumptuous, and and Adam is standing there. They both stark raving naked in the painting, except Adam's penis isn't the normal phallus. Adam's penis is the head of a serpent, head and a small bit of the serpent's neck. And as she's going into panic and she's saying, I'm just terrified, I don't know what I'm going to do, Tick recites, yea, though I walk through the valley, and the shadow of death I will feel no evil, for thou art with me. Ah, yeah, yeah, thy rod and thy staff, they do comfort me. And she says, that's my favorite passage. I used to say it all the time when I got scared. And he was like, yeah, I know. And she was like, yeah, my mama used to, when my mama would go to the church and leave me, we all knew she wasn't going to the church. She would leave me. She would abandon me and leave me by myself all the time. And when she would come back home, when she would finally come back home, it would be a different man on her arm. But when she would leave, I would just sit in that window and I would recite that scripture, the only scripture I've ever known, over and over. And it's this moment where they sort of connect, you know, when she's telling this story about abandon. And it's also in this moment we realize that Letitia is not, you know, she comes across strong, and she is strong, and she comes across fearless, and she is fearless, but she's still human. She's still female. She's still fragile. She's still frightened. She's afraid. She's never encountered these things. She goes to war. She goes to battle with white supremacy and oppression and just this injustice. Okay, she's a rebel. She's outspoken, you know, and that type of thing. And she's militant, but at the same time, which is all of us, we're all layered. We all have these layers. She's fragile and she's frightened. And her and Tick begin to kiss and smooch and flat out make out. Okay, flat out make out. Okay. Meanwhile, we swivel around the castle. It's huge, to the other side of the hallway, and we go into George's room, right? And George is listening to Morse code on the other side of the wall. See, the individual that has come into Letty's room is a specter. A specter. The person that is in Letty's room making out with her is not actually Tick. It's really meant, a specter meant to calm her down and to get her eyes off the prize and to keep her from focusing too much and being uncooperative and wanting to get the hell on and leading Tick away from there instead of leading Tick to stay there. That's basically what her specter is doing. So we go back to George, and he's in the room and he is listening to Morse code. Through the wall. Tick is giving him Morse code. The actual Tick, the Tick we know and love, is giving him Morse code through the wall. And the Morse code, as he's spelling it out, spells out wizards. Wizardry is afoot. Wizards. And at the same time, Tick is in his room and he is giving this Morse code. He hears the mechanisms. Wall opens up and out comes this Korean woman, and she's dressed in sort of army fatigues, not fatigues, but army greenery, right? And she comes out shooting, pow, pow, pow. What seems like actual bullets. I mean, we see them go through the sofa as Tick leaps over the chase lounge. We see the bullets fly through it, and he gets down underneath there, and there's this kerfluffle where George hears this kerfluffle on the other side of the wall, and we see where Tick is grabbing the gun and lifting the hands up, and the woman is fighting him, and they are battling. And I think she even at some point pulls out a knife, and we hear him say, Gia, stop. Now, in the subtitle, Gia is spelled J-I-A-H. Gia, stop. I don't want to hurt you. George can hear it, but he don't know what that is. Like, what is that strange noise? He decides, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull the book that I pulled down before, the House of the Badlands, and go back behind this wall and see if I can look in this other book and find more stuff. Like, he does remember that this did transpire. And as he goes to pull it, we begin to hear Nat King Cole in the background. As George turns to the sound of the music, he sees over next to the window, next to the side table, in the light of the sun, we see a very beautiful woman, Dora, who is Tic's mom. We don't know until George calls her Dora. When he sees her, he's shocked to see her, but remember, Dora is dead. She's there and she's in her, her 50s garb. Dora seems younger, so she must have passed away at a time where she was much younger. And she's almost girlish. This is his specter. This is George's specter. George's specter obviously appeared in this way that George remembered Dora last, which was at a much earlier time when she was much younger and he was much younger. These are his final memories of her, and so it's his memory of her that sucks him in, that allows him not necessarily to panic, even though there's a part of his mind that knows that she is dead for sure, but he allows it to continue because everything is so spot on. Everything is just as he remembered. There are probably feelings coming back to him when he sees her that are equally as familiar. And so she walks up to him and she says, "Dance with me." He said, "You're not real." "I know, you're right, but dance with me anyway." And so she tucks herself into his chest and hand on shoulder, and she's there laying on him, and he's hugging her up and got his head laid on top of her head because she fits perfectly in that perfect space, right? And she says, what are you reading?" And he was like, "Well, I was gonna read the bad," and she'll tell me a story. And he tells her a story basically about the journey that they've been on, but he tells it in sort of this fairy tale type of way about, dragons and villains and this castle that popped up in the middle of the woods. And she was like, "You were always a dreamer. Remember how me, you, and Montrose used to sit on the front stoop and we would play the what if game?" And he kind of laughs. He was like, "Yeah, I remember the what if games." And I said, "What if you could be anything?" And Montrose wanted to be a superhero, and you said you wanted to fly. And he was like, "Yeah, I remember wanting to fly." And she said, "You can fly. You can fly. If you want to fly, you can fly." See, this is the enticement. This is the specter portion of it. Knows it's not real, but it feels good. We flash back to Leti, and Leti is in there, and she's laid down, and Spectre Tick has stood up, baby, and he was wrestling with that belt buckle, baby, and he pops it open. And she's like, "Wait a minute, Tick, I want to tell you something first before." But Spectre Tick ain't trying to hear it. He finna, and get it out and put it in and all of that. And she's like, "I'm trying to tell you something." And he don't care, and he's still wrestling with the buckle. And Tick is in his room, and his specter Gia, he got her down on the ground after they done tore the room all up to be damned, and he is choking and choking and choking her, and she is laying there. She's dead. And Tick stops and looks at her and looks at his hands. And then we flash back to George, where she's telling him, "You can fly. You can absolutely fly if that's what you want to do." And George comes out of it just as they are about to kiss. I was like, why are you kissing your brother's wife, sir? And he comes to himself right before they kiss, right before he submits and gives himself over to this specter, huh? Okay. And he says, you are not real. In this same moment, we go back to Leti, and Spectre Tick has opened his belt buckle, and instead of this penis, I mean, she's kind of petty, like, Tick, wait. And when he opens his buckle, out comes this serpent instead of his penis. And it comes towards her, and she reaches over on the side table next to the bed and pulls up her hand and stabs. Okay. And it pans out where we see Christina Braithwhite and all of these members of her daddy's lodge, the Sons of Adam, I guess they're supposed to be, or the Order of the Ancient Dawn, are watching through this mystical archway. And so, other words, they're behind the scenes, and they're able to look in on Tick and George and Leti's room and see how they're operating, see how they're moving. They're watching it like TV. They're watching it like through the mirrors that they have in their room. They're able to watch them and see what they're doing and see how they operate, kind of like animals in a cage, if you will. Okay, come on now and catch this symbolism here now. Catch it now. Like they watching beasts, in the wild, in their wild, an experiment, if you will. Like, what if we sent Tick over to Leti's room, since they kind of seem like they might like each other? What would George do if we put Dora in front of him, considering that's kind of like a situation between Montrose and Dora and George, and ultimately probably Hippolyta. It's probably a secret from Hippolyta, I'm sure. Okay, they're watching it all, and we see where she's once again taking a drink, and she walks up behind another mirror, and there's a group of the white men there, the lodge members standing there, and they say, what is Braithwhite's daughter doing here? Not directly to her, but like in conversation to one another. Now remember, she's a female, so she don't really exist. I mean, she present, but she not really present, right? Like, she can speak, but she has no voice, if you will. And they talk about how she's out of a Michigan lodge, the lodge in Michigan. This just amplified small talk that they're having, but it's notes for us. It's things for us to put a pin into, okay? And so we get to hear the dinner bell, okay? And so Tick and Leti and George come out of their rooms, and when they come out of their rooms, there's sort of this spell has been broken. Their specters have gone, and they come out of their rooms, and they're disheveled and they're confused. I mean, they have been through so much within the last 24 to 48 hours almost, and now this thing individually has happened in their room, to which they, and of course the people that were watching to them, are only privy to, but they don't know it. So when they come out of their room, there's this bewilderment, there's this shame, there's this sort of anxiety amongst all of them. Tick especially looks broken, and Leti looks like like she just about to crack, like she's about to break. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the heck is going on here? And George, who is the elder of the Freemans at this moment, he is trying to weave it all together. Remember, he's also a scholar, so he's coming at this from not as of an emotional place as Leti and Tick are. He's coming from this from probably maybe a more logical place, right? And so William shows up and say, hey, dinner is in 15 minutes, and it is black tie, and unfortunately, Miss Lewis, it does not involve women. It does not include women. But I'm sure you're going to love eating your dinner on the veranda. And so it's at this moment that when he walks off, and when he walks off, Tick turns to George and say, what they make you see? And George say it don't matter. They're just trying to get inside our head. Tick says, something bad happened in the war. Something bad. And George says, don't. You know who you are. You were a good boy, he says, and you're an even better man now. Don't you ever let them make you question yourself. And he looks at Leti. This for you too. Huh? This for you too. Okay? Don't you ever let them make you question yourself. That's how they win. They want to make us crazy. They want to terrorize us. And they come together. And they hold hands. He's holding Tick's hand to his chest. And he's holding Leti's hands to his chest. And he tells her, they want to terrorize us, make us scared. Okay? He said, but you are Letitia Bucking Lewis. And it breaks it. It breaks that tension. It breaks that moment of angst. It breaks that moment of anxiety. And she laughs. She laughs. And Tick laughs. Okay? It's this moment where he tells them, gather yourselves. Gather yourselves, huh? You may be in something, but that something is not inside of you. I'm telling you, this is a good show. This is a good show. It is layered. It is peppered. It is sprinkled. It is in depth. It's meaty and milky and soft and hard in all the right places. This is good television, you guys. Okay? Excellent writing. It's poignant. It's perfect. It speaks to where we are, where we were in the 50s and the 40s. And it speaks to where we are right here, right now, September 2020. Come on, y'all. Come on. Let's do this. Okay, and so in this moment they laugh and he said, listen, I think I may have found something that just might get us out of here. And we cut to the dinner scene. Okay, and so we go to the dinner scene. It's another great hall. Okay, it's a full of chamber music and white folks. And Tick and George walk in tuxedos. Baby, when I tell you they whistle stop clean, they whistle stop clean, baby. And the white men see them come in and they're whispering and cutting their eyes at them and sliding them like, how dare you show up with your back erect and your eyes looking me directly in mine eyes? And why aren't you serving? Why have you come in through the front way? This is how they looking at them, right? And William showed Tick and George to their table, and they not at the great table. They not at a table full of other people. They at a table with just him and George. Okay? And it's a moment because you see that they are not welcome. And then we see where William leans down in between the two of them, and he says to them, don't worry, gentlemen. Just because you are not welcome does not mean you don't belong here. I said, Lord, if you don't preach, huh, Father? If you don't come with a word, okay? If you don't come with a word for your people, for your children, okay? Just because you are not welcome does not mean, honeybees, that you do not belong. Okay, let's move forward. Let's go on. And so, Samuel Braithwhite walks up, and he is in this same robe that the doctor was in, but just a little bit more, the doctor, a little bit more fluffy. And he began speaking about sacrifice, and everyone in the room has helped to push the world forward in some sort of way. Now, mind you, there are no women in this room. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, he says Titus Braithwhite was the son of a son, meaning Titus's daddy was a firstborn son, and he was the firstborn son of his daddy, right? Son of a son. And just as he was the first son, like Adam was the first son, he said he gave of his Adam was the first son and gave of his rib to create Eve, I too have given of myself. And at this time, all of the staff is coming and placing in front of them a little small piece, a little small bite, a little small sliver of Samuel Braithwhite's liver. The liver he had snatched out, the chunk of liver he had cut off and snatched out earlier, he is now serving it, little pieces. And the French call it an amuse-bouche, which means small bite. He's serving them, if you will, an amuse-bouche of his liver. This is his way of giving to them. Child. Tick tells George. He looks over and George is like, oh, I don't know what this is. Is it beet salad or what do we have here? A small piece of pickled beet? What do we have here? Is this gingered beet we have here? Dehydrated and then rehydrated. What do we have here? He give him the seatbelt arm. Y'all know what the seatbelt arm is when you was riding along back in the 70s. And your mama stopped on brakes and she put that arm over there on you to keep you from sliding forward, which doesn't work, but it made them feel better and it made you feel love, right? He put that seatbelt arm over across George and tell George don't eat that. And George was like, okay, no problem. You ain't got to tell me but once. Samuel Braithwhite, he says, eat, sup, and tomorrow's a special day. And thank you all. And so George stands up and says, no need to thank us. And everybody was like, I know you ain't talking. We done let you in this great hall of whiteness, and you gonna come in here and act like you run the show. You talking out of turn. You talking out of your depth. This how they looking at him. They all turn their head like, I know you not. George said, no need to thank us. He said, because we didn't want to be here. I said, okay, George. He said, he references who they are, which is the Order of the Ancient Dawn, right? And he says, I'm familiar with fraternal groups and fraternal societies. He said, being a part of the Prince Hall Freemasons myself. He said, y'all familiar? Is anybody here familiar with Prince Hall? He said he was an abolitionist, okay, out of Massachusetts. And he tried to join his local hall of Freemasons, but he couldn't join. And he leans over and tags Tick in. You know what I'm saying? He punts to Tick, if you will. He says, Tick, now, remind me, nephew, why he couldn't join. And Tick say, because he was a colored man. The bylaws wouldn't allow Prince Hall because he was a colored man. He said, but in those same laws, I discovered a loophole, if you will. Okay, come on now. Talk to us about loopholes. He said, yeah, I discovered a loophole. He said, direct descendants of Titus are automatically members. He said, my nephew is a son amongst sons. Okay, and so therefore it makes him a son of Adam, if you will. It makes him the superior member. In other words, he is tenured. He is the elite. He is the pinnacle. He is superior to all you other little subjugate members who've just paid your fees and ate your sliver of liver, you know what I'm saying, and do as you told, basically, is what he's saying. And he is allowed to tell regular members, the regular peon members, what to do. So my nephew is the last blood heir. And Tick stands up and tells everybody but Samuel Braithwhite to get the F out. Get the buck out. Tick got up and walked around the side of that table and walks up to the grand table as they all shook in silence and looking at him like, are you serious? And Tick says to them, gentlemen, that is an order. They all get up all disgusted, little child, and get up and throw their napkins down and walk out. And Samuel is sitting there And as they all file out, and Tick says to him, I order you to return my father to me. Okay, and Samuel Braithwhite deep breath, and he looks down, and he pinches his eyes like he got a headache rolling up on the front of his cranium, and takes a deep breath. This is also a dismissive power move because he kind of putting Tick off. He not moved, he not scared, he not excited. It's a power move because he want to show Tick that he's not moved by what he's done. He's not impressed at all. He ain't disgusted. If he is, he ain't showing it, right? And he takes out a pair of readers and puts them on and gets up and walks off and walks right up to Atticus' face. Walks right up to Tick's face. And he, as if to say, puny humans. And Samuel Braithwhite, he says, those minions are subject to the law. And that is the height of my investment with them. That's the height of my investment in these laws and these loopholes that you're talking about, in the fact that it keeps them under control. It keeps them submitted. Okay, it keeps them believing in something. Catch what they're saying here. It keeps them subjugated. It keeps them in line. It keeps them oppressed. It keeps them from fighting back. It keeps them from speaking up. That's the height of my investment, emotional otherwise, in these bylaws. He's saying, I operate on a higher plane here. I operate on a much, much higher plane here. Titus used the book to spell himself a measure of power. And that measure of power, you have in turn inherited a measure of that power. He's acknowledging Tick's power. He's acknowledging Tick's place in the lineage and the legacy, but he at the same time belittles it by saying it is diluted. It's enough to get all your minions to get up out of here. Okay, and you drew Tick here for a reason. You want something. But let me just move on. I digress. Okay, and so he says a diluted measure of said power. He said tainted, but still useful to the work I have to do. He said, but don't mistake useful. This is Samuel Braithwhite. Don't mistake useful for indispensable. And he turns and he walks out. Okay, in the next scene, we see Tick and George storming into the stone tower. And they calling after Montrose, Pops, Montrose, are you in here? And all the meat is gone and it's just the bare floor. And George spots a flask and he says he was here. He definitely was here. And he takes the flask and picks it up and throws it at Tick, and Tick looks at it. He said, that's your dad. And so at the same time, we hear a gun cock, click, 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 shotgun. And it's the white woman, the one that guarded the tower, the one that took them back to their rooms, the one that's got the whistle. I really, really hope and pray they took that whistle from around her neck. The one that's got the whistle, And she is standing there talking about just like a old animal, old filthy animal. And just as she gets going good and starting to talk about how she can blow their head off and all that and the third, we hear, hey! And it's Leti, and she got a shovel, and she don't have a flat part of the shovel. You know what I'm saying? She got the arm of the shovel, and she take the sharpest point of that arm and thump that lady in the head and crack her head open, and she fall bloop down at the foot of the stairs, knocked out. And jumps down and she says, where's Montrose? Where, you know what I'm saying? Where is he? And he's not in here. And so at this time, George is feeling along the wall and it comes to him, The Count of Monte Cristo, which was your pop's favorite book, right? Montrose's favorite book. And he's feeling along the stone wall and still thinking about the story and how the escape happened. And he pulls this huge stone, slightly out. And so he pulls the stone out and he tells Tick, help me. And Tick helps him grab the stone, and they pull it out, and it leaves a pretty good size hole, enough for a real slim individual to maybe climb through. Now he looks through this hole, that, like I said, a slim person can get through, and they all standing there at the light of the hole and look down into the hole, and it is a type of tunnel. At the same time, we see up outside of this building, just off to the side of it, we see a set of hands break through this dirt. And they're shackled. These shackled hands break through this dirt. And then we see where the person pushes themselves out. They're covered in dirt. And it's a black man covered in dirt and grime and weeds and all of this. He climbs out of the hole and looks around and realizes he has escaped and he is out, and he is like, and just as he does it, we hear George say, hello, Montrose. And Montrose turns around. What the hell are y'all doing here? And George is like, we came to save you. I don't need y'all to duck and save me. He's Montrose. He's Montrose Freeman. What the buck y'all doing? I ain't asked y'all. I ain't need y'all to save me. I can save my bucking self. And Tick is like, no, wait a minute. You wrote me a letter to come. It's like, man, I ain't talked to you in 5 years. In 5 years, you have fought me on everything. I write you one letter in the rest and you follow me. I don't need your goddamn help. What are you, stupid or something? And George says, don't talk to him like that. He said, I talk to my bucking son any bucking way I want to. And Leti, who is a scouting and looking around, making sure nobody walk up on them unless they get the handle of that shovel. Can we get the buck out of here, please? And they get in the car. And they tearing up the road. Now they trying to get the heck out of town. Like, they got the daddy. They done got out the house. They finna get the heck on, right? Like, I don't know what's going on here, but we not having it. While they riding up the road, I believe Leti was, Tick was driving, and George was in the front seat. And, or George was in the back seat, and Leti was leaning over and trying to get Montrose shackles off of him, trying to break them shackles off of him. So, as Tick drive, and George, who has done a bit more research, George says there are lodges all over the place. He says this lodge is called the Sons of Adam, and it was founded by Titus Braithwhite. And they believe in something called the Book of Names. And Montrose says, like, you mean the Necronomicon? And so George says, no, that's the Book of Dead Names. This is the Book of Life. It's about transformation. They're obsessed with Genesis, with immortality. And the first attempt at immortality failed, which is what caused the fire of the original lodge to burn down. He said, killing everyone inside except for Hannah. Hannah, who was the slave that escaped. Okay. At this same time, Tick is continuing to drive, and he is speeding along. They trying to get the hell out of Dodge, right? It is pitch black night, but they got to get out of hell out of here, away from dogs and animals and spells and liver eating and all of this stuff. And he drives so far until he meets that same invisible force field that was blocking him from coming out of his room. Sort of, like I said, it kind of buckles, but it doesn't break. It's invisible. And the front of the car just crinkles all up like an accordion, and it sort of happens out of the clear blue because the wall doesn't look like anything. I mean, it looks like you could walk right into the darkness, but it really is this invisible wall, and they crash into it. And in the background, we hear a Marilyn Manson song starts to play. Anytime you ever hear a Marilyn Manson song playing, it is not about lollipops and gumdrops. It's about blood and gore and death and murder and brutality, right? Very graphic song is playing, and it's kind of rockish, And there's this car that's pulling up behind their crashed vehicle, which is, by the way, the silver fancy long, like, Rolls Royce type car that they done crashed, and it's pulling up behind them, and out jumps Samuel Braithwhite, just very calm, and he's got Christina Braithwhite there, and he's got a gun. And so Tick is the first one out of the car to gather himself and stand up, and then we see where he kind of faces Samuel and Christina, and then we see where Letitia gets out of the car, and she is stumbling and falling, and she's gathering herself because she, they've just been in a collision, and she's sort of in this shock place, and he stretches in this sort of like place where she's just trying to crack her back almost. Samuel Braithwhite shoots her, and she goes down, and Tick is like, Letty. It runs over to her. Hold on, Letty. You're okay. Now, see, Tick been to war. He been to war. So he panicking, but he's trying to save a team member at this time. He's trying to collect her. You're okay. And then we see where Uncle George gets out of the car, and Montrose has already gotten out when Letty got shot, and he is behind the door where Letty is on the ground in between the door and the door frame of the car. Montrose is on the other side of that door, and of course Tick is crouched down on the ground with Letty, trying to get her to hold on to keep her from going into that light, that great light. And so we see where George gets out on the opposite side, the passenger side of the car, and stands up, and he is collecting himself. And so Tick is like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? Stop this. You don't have to do this. And he yells at, first he yells for George, which is why George gets out the car. And then he yells at Christina, and he asks her to do something. Because remember, she gave him the conversation about friendship and making friends and being friends and all of this kind of stuff. And he looks at her and say, Christina, why don't you do something? Don't let him do this. And so Christina just looks away like, I cannot help you publicly. I cannot help you right here in front of my daddy. Like, I cannot do it. And she looks ashamed of that fact. She looks ashamed of the fact that that they are in this situation, that this thing has happened, that it has gone this far. But it's not enough for her to speak up. Tick continues to sort of console and try to rally Letty. After all, she is tough. Like, she is tough, but stay awake. Remember, you can do this. Stay awake. And right there, in between the door and the door frame, Letitia Bucking Lewis dies. Okay, and Tick is aware that she is dead and she is gone, and he stands up and he is breathing hard and he is looking around. He's trying to make sense of it all, and Samuel Braithwhite says, since you are son amongst sons, I'll give you the choice of who else survives. Okay, who else survives your error in judgment? Now Tick is like and looks at George, and Samuel takes that look at George. He looks at him, and Samuel takes that as him wanting George to be shot, and he shoots George. We then flash to a scene where Tick is naked, and he's in a room full of handmaids, and they are wiping his body down, and he is arms stretched out, kind of like the symbol you see in medical offices. His body is stretched out kind of like that, and they are bathing and wiping down his arms, and Christina is there, and we just see Tick from the back, marvelously, fantastically, sculptorally from the back. Oh, he's a magnificent black man. Oh yes. And Christina is in front of him, and he's got a little tear in his eyes, and he got them lips, and the jawline is tight. I mean, he is seething underneath it. And there is a glow that they're in that back office, that sort of behind the scenes layer part of the castle, where he's able to look into one of the rooms, and in one of the rooms we see Letty on the sofa, her body on the sofa, and we see George in the bed, and we see Montrose standing beside George's bed. through this looking glass, through this two-way mirror, if you will, this mystical two-way mirror, if you will. And so we don't know what's going on. Like we do not know what is happening. Like I said, he is standing there and the handmaids are bathing him down. And although he's heartbroken and teary-eyed, he says, what's going to happen during the ceremony? And Christina says, my father intends to open the door to the Garden of Eden, a time when man was immortal. He believes he'll step through into eternal life. Tick notes that that didn't go so well for Titus, though, did it? Okay, whole house, all his property and everything burned to the ground. See, that didn't go so well for Titus, though, did it, huh? He says she says it can be a challenge. It can be tricky, if you will, to navigate immortality. The language of Adam is tough to interpret, she says, but Father thinks he has figured out the formula, and you, Tick, might just give him the advantage that he needs. Tick says, so that's why you brought me here, to help you and your daddy, who clearly doesn't give two issues about you. After all, it's not called the daughters of Adam, is it? Okay, it's called sons of Adam. I'm saying Christina says the things that have been done, you're right, are unforgivable, but you brought them here. She says, it was you that brought them here. You could have came by yourself. You brought the two of them up that road. And she says, the things that they've done, sons of Adam, it's unforgivable. But still we help them, don't we? We come to their aid, don't we? It's all so pathetic, and we call it family to make it seem okay. We call that being family, right? And he says, you didn't have to bring them into it. And we see where Leti wakes up off the sofa. She patting herself down and trying to figure it all out. Like, what is happening? And we cut back. Coming back into focus to Tick and Christina. Tick lets him know once he willingly does his part in the ceremony, her father, who is a lot of things, he's not a liar, he gonna keep his word, and he's gonna restore both of them. Now Leti has already been restored to life, but he's also going to undo what he has done physically to George. And so this is why Tick is going ahead through this. This is why he's so calm, because it is his hope that Samuel Braithwhite and Christina's word will be kept and they will save George, who is so important to him. He says, let's get on with it. She takes his hand and she talks to him, and she says to him, listen, your destiny is not decided by your father or your grandfather. You don't have to follow their trajectory for your lives. She said, for your life. She says that it's just the smallest things, the smallest little nuances that can change the very trajectory of your life. And as she's telling him this, she says, your father, your grandfather, or in your case, your great grandfather. So Tick is 4 times removed from Titus Braithwhite. Okay, he's 4th generation first son. All right. And so as she slides that ring on his finger, she tells him it's the smallest things that can change your trajectory. She says to him, all you have to do is just see it and seize it. Okay. So back in the room, like I said, Lydia is brought back from death, and she's shook. She's confused, and she goes to the bathroom and she feels it, and she looks, and she's bloody, and she just wants to get out of these bloody clothes, and she pulls that shirt up and she looks at her skin, and I know I was shot. I know it was a wound. This is what she's thinking to herself. This is the look on her face that I was talking about. The look on these character faces. It says it all. All I know, I was just supposed to be bleeding. And she wants to get this shirt off of her, and she wants to take it off, and she splashes the water up on her body and tries to just wash it all away. Just wash it all away, the horrific nature of it all. And then it floods into the front of her cranium and into the depths of her emotion. It bursts this unimaginable grief and shock and horror, and she takes a towel and she balls it up and she puts it in her mouth and she screams and she cries. She puts it all into the towel. She's still strong, but she's fragile. She's a fighter, but she's human. Okay? She's a lover. She's tender in places. And this well of emotion, she needs to let it out. She needs to let this fragile, broken, confused, horrified energy out. But the strong side of her takes a towel and balls it and shoves it in her own mouth, and she pushes all of the pain into the towel. Boy, when I tell y'all this scene right here almost broke me loose. Okay, when I tell you Journey put all of who she is into this thing, please y'all, please believe what I'm telling you. And so we see cut to George laying in the bed, and he's bleeding, and he is barely clinging on to life, and he is mumbling out of his pain and out of his sort of hallucinations of pain. And still in his right mind, he's focused and he's driven. He has to have this conversation with Montrose, and he says to Montrose, break the window and leave here. And Montrose says, I'm not leaving you here. He says, well, get the girl, at least get her out of here, at least save her. And Montrose said, well, listen, I'm not leaving you here, and Leti don't look like anybody can tell her what to do. Right? Seemed like to me she invested. And George says, yeah, you're right. She reminds me of Dee. Dee is Diana, George's daughter. And we talked about her in the review for the first episode. He says, she reminds me of Dee. How come you never drew with her? Meaning Dee. He said, how come you never drew? You used to draw all the time. And Montrose said, no, I didn't. You're getting senile in your old age. Now, Montrose is drinking a strong drink. And he says, George said, every summer you used to draw the most colorful, beautiful posters and signs to carry down to the bus station to cheer on all the Negro League players as they came in for training camp. He said, why did you stop? And Montrose says, cause daddy's right hook. Because of daddy's right hooks. The summer before high school, his father caught him down at the train station and beat him within an inch of his life. And George says, I didn't know that. Montrose, takes the drink and the thought of it all, and he turns and walks to go make him another drink. He don't really want to talk about this. He don't focus on you getting better and we all getting out of here. This is what Montrose is thinking. George says, you were brimming with love back then, he said. He said, as a boy, you were brimming with love despite not being afforded so little. Despite being afforded so little, he says, if I ever made you feel, and that's when Montrose walked off. Like, he don't want to talk about this. Like, no, you're not finna make me feel. You're not finna break me down like this. You're not finna give me like final words like this, because you're gonna survive. You're gonna be all right. It's gonna be okay. And he wants him to just shut up. He said, there's nothing wrong with loving that much. You just need to shut up and rest, George. This Montrose. He said, that's the problem. I've been shutting up too long. I've hurt those that I love. You, Hippolyta, Tick. Montrose looks up from making his drink. I want you, George said, I want you to show him that love that was in you before Daddy beat it out of you. Before it's too late. Montrose says, how many times I got to tell you I don't need your advice when it comes to raising my son? George said, well, he might not be yours. I said, oh. This why he must have broke down the way he did when Tick came against him and said, you never spoke up for me when Daddy was beating me, when Daddy was oppressing me, when Montrose was oppressing me, you never spoke up. And when Tick walked off in disgust and George put his hand up to his mouth and was so broken in that moment, maybe this is why, because he knew that Tick could possibly be his son. He knew that Tick was more like him than like Montrose. Tick loved to read. Tick is adventurous. Tick is open-minded. Tick is flexible. He's open to learning things and exploring. And Montrose is just old sour drunk. Might not be yours. Montrose said, I don't care if you do have a bullet in your gut. We settled that a long time ago. So you shut your mouth. George says, I know. We agreed to never speak of it. But I have to now. You might be all that Tick has left. It's a moment. It's another one of those moments where we realize, oh gosh, this story is so layered. It's so rich. You could start this series all over again when it ends and find little nuances and little places over and over again. This is a story that can be told to your children's children. It's just that layered. It's just that deep and in depth. Okay, let's move forward. Now, it's dawn and the sun is rising. Okay, and then so this is where we hear the speakeasy commentary of Gil Scott-Heron about his take on the moon landing and his piece that he wrote called Whiteys on the Moon. And I'm not going to read it to y'all, but I will go ahead, you guys, and put y'all in the mood. Gil is in like a speakeasy, baby, and he is talking in a very good microphone, and there is a crowd of listening ears and bated breath that we hear throughout this poem that sort of laughs a little bit and quaffs a little bit at the tone. And Gil Scott-Heron begins to recite about his sister Nell, who was bit by a rat and began to swell. And all of this is the soundtrack for this ceremony, for this moment. This commentary, Whiteys on the Moon, as the moon goes down and the sun comes up in this ceremony, is being recited as the soundtrack for this moment. This is the music, okay, for this scene. And so we get to see where Tick is standing in the center of this great sort of room where you can walk out of this room in many directions through archways. So this room is not walled, but the walls are archways, if you will. And in each archway are these white men, these members, Ancient Dawn members, Sons of Adam, whatever. They are in these archways, and then in one of the larger archways, standing out is Samuel Braithwhite. And Tick is in the center of this room, and there's this huge circle on the floor, and it doesn't look like a pentagram. It looked like a regular tile floor, but he's in the center of it. And there is this large wooden archway that you could have walked an elephant through, and it's made of wood, natural wood, like from the forest, and it has been erected there in the room. It's just a wood archway. That's all that it is at this glance. And then at Tick's right and left flank is this sphere of electric light, okay, these round spheres, and directly behind him is another electric sphere. And it kind of reminds you, if you ever been to a novelty store like Spencer's or somewhere like that, and they used to have them static electric balls that when you touch it, the static like jumps towards your hand and all of that stuff. And some of them made your hair raise up a little bit. If you was Caucasian and didn't have a lot of grease or something in your hair, you know, it could make the hair stand up on your head. And it's supposed to be like this magical moment, but it's just static electricity. So all three balls have this, are connected by this static electricity, right? And so, like I said, they flank and are right behind Tick. And then in this great room of arches, we see there is this round window, and through this window is showing the sunlight as it comes up. And so it's beaming, like I said, from a high place and casting down to where Tick is standing. Now, typically when you have sunlight behind you, it casts a shadow in front of you, but we don't see a shadow in front of Tick. Now, Tick is standing in front of the archway, and these spheres are behind him. And so he's standing directly in front of this archway. And so you would think you would see his shadow sort of casted into the floor in front of this archway, or even on the archway itself, but you don't see that. Now it's darkness all around him, and the only light there is the light from the spheres, and there are candles, the light and the electricity from the spheres. And then there is this sunlight, if you will, beaming down. It's beaming down on the back of Tick's head and the top of his shoulders. It is not, once again, casting this shadow of Tick, which is odd. You don't see the light break past Tick and into the archway. So it's not a full casting of the light, right? It's almost like Tick has blocked the light from casting in front of him and casting a shadow in front of him. The light stops just behind Tick's head and the top of his shoulders, okay? And Gil Scott Heron is still in the background talking about, I had to pay my bills, and Whitey's on the moon, and it's this scene. And so Samuel Braithwhite is chanting, and he's doing his chanting, and as he chants, and Tick is standing there kind of unsure and kind of just don't know, and he's looking into this archway. We see where as Samuel continues to chant, Tick begins to bow forward in what we think is pain, okay? And he's screaming, and we see the light from the sun begin to creep over the top of his shoulders and around the front of his shoulders and into the center of his chest like tentacles, and it comes around underneath his underarm, kind of like somebody snapping a vest in front of you. If you ever been swimming, you put the vest on and then snap it right in the center at the breastbone, right in the front. Well, this light, this sunlight is creeping around almost like electricity around the front and around the underneath side of his upper chest area, and gathering in this center place like Iron Man, like right in the center part of his chest, this billowing light that looks like fire, but it's not flickering. It's electric. It's energy. It's pure energy. And the electric spheres have now connected not just with themselves, but they are shooting into the back of Tick, and they're conducting or ushering the sunlight and its energy in and around and up and through, and gathering it in the center of Tick's chest. And he is bowed and he is screaming, and I think, oh my gosh, this is going to rip him apart. He's got to be in complete and utter pain. What are they doing to him? It looked as though it was consuming him, and he's screaming at the same time. We see at the foot of the arch, now it is chanting soft, very soft, and almost it's inaudible in the background, and we still hear Gil Scott Heron lamenting about Whitey being on the moon, and Tick is screaming, and the sun is beaming, and the electricity is being conducted. At the base of the archway, we begin to see vines and dirt and flowers on the vines sort of creep out. It's almost like Eden, the Garden of Eden, is creeping out of this archway, and Tick is screaming, and he seems, like I said, to be in pain. He almost looks as though he is being consumed with it. And so we see now that the center of the archway is this burning, billowing fire, flickering and licking and all ablaze. And he's looking into the center of this thing. All the while, SB, Samuel Braithwhite, is chanting and he's smiling. It's working. It's working. Eden is here. Eden is here, and he's smiling because Tick was the key. He is the key to making all of this happen. And I don't know if it is because Tick is the first son of a son. I don't know if it's because he's of African Moorish descent. We'd all like to believe that he is the key and the catalyst. He was the missing piece of the puzzle that they needed. Now, we can say he was the missing piece of the puzzle that they needed to usher in immortality, but we can also transfer it now and say we are important. As a people, we are important. We are the missing pieces to a lot of puzzles that are going on out there. Okay, so and when we say that, we can reference Henrietta Lacks when we say that, right? Okay, what we got, you can't lose with the stuff we use. Okay, okay, come on now. All right, let's move forward. So like I said, the center of the arch is ablaze, and all around the green vines have now grown out into the floor, and they are growing up the side of the archway, kind of like you see archways decorated in weddings. It's covered in flowers and vines and that type of thing. And Tick is at his breaking point. He is screaming and he is retching, and he looks over at his hand, at that ring that Christina gave him, and now what? He sees this sort of creeping, billowing smoke, black smoke coming out of this ring. Now, if you ever seen fire on the other side of a door, the door is closed, you know that it's fire, but you can see where the smoke licks up from underneath it and sort of crawls up the side of the door and down the side of the walls. It don't spread like cigarette smoke or cigar smoke. It creeps and crawls up the side of the wall. So this black, bewitching, evil darkness kind of smoke crawls up Tick's arm, and he begins to scream that much louder, like, what the heck is going on? And it has come around his body and creeping up his shoulders, and he is bent and he is screaming. And just as he is about to crack, or so I think, he looks into the center of the fire, and there is this sort of white bubble, this clearing, and he sees Hannah, a pregnant Hannah, and she's standing there with her hands on her belly, and she's looking directly at him, and he's looking at her. Their eyes have locked. She's in the center of the fire in the archway, and Samuel is chanting, and Gil is giving us his poem about Whitey being on the moon. And it was something about this moment as he looked at her and she looked at him, and he began to stretch his body backwards from this bent position and stand upright. I realized it's not that he's in pain. He was in terror. It was terror. It was utter and complete terror as to what was going on for him, and she continues to keep eyes locked on him, like, stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, okay? And he breaks his back, and he and the structure, the arches, the building begins to crumble like an earthquake, and pieces of ceiling are falling, and we go back to Leti and George and Montrose in the room, and Leti has run out, and she's like, we've got to get out of here, and Montrose, get him up, we're gonna get out of here, like, this is something terrible is happening. And Montrose is like, I'm afraid if I pick him up and move him, then he's gonna bleed out. And she says, we've got to go now, we must go now. And so they run out of the mansion and leave the mansion just as the floor is opening up and the ceiling is coming down. They're able to get out of that. We go back to Tick, and he is down there and he is screaming. When he lets out this scream, and this black seems to come up, and the ceiling begins to crack and all of that, and Samuel Braithwhite is at this heightened place where he is chanting, and Gil Scott Heron is coming down to the very end of his poem, and Samuel is smiling because he feels like this is it, this is pinnacle, and the other members are starting to get frightened. Then we see them begin to scatter and try to break and try to run. And Gil says, I think I'll send these doctor bills airmail special to Whitey on the moon. And in that instant, bloom, Samuel Braithwhite turns to stone. All the members that didn't run and scurry off to their death turns to stone. And Tick is released from this grip, and he sees Hannah inside the fiery archway begin to run, and he realizes, I gotta get out, and he runs through the archway. And at first I thought, well, is he chasing her out? Why is he going through? He's run through the archway, and Hannah is running through the archway, and out of down the corridor and around the corner, and she gets to the door of the house, the front door of the house, and she's standing there with that pregnant belly, pregnant with purpose and lineage and legacy and all of that, and she's got a book underneath her arm. I don't remember the book from when they were back in the room with the arches, but we see this book under her arm. So she's standing in the door light of the doorway, and she looks back, and I realize in this moment he's following her. She's leading him out of this crumbling building, and so he reaches out for her, and she runs into the abyss, runs into the nothingness, runs into whence she came, disappears. And he breaks out of the house just as the roof implodes. Now, it doesn't explode, it doesn't burn down, it implodes, which means it collapses into itself. The towers, the room, the roof, the floor, the archway, the driveway where you pull your caddy up front and let somebody out and then go park it. It all crumbles and implodes into itself. And Tick runs from the building and looks back at it, and it's full morning, full on daylight, and he's still got this robe on. It's not hurt at all. It's not burned or Tick is just standing there stunned, and he's also puzzled. This look on his face, because he thinks his uncle and his daddy and Leti is in there, and he don't know what the hell is going on. And he hears his name, Tick, and he looks behind him, and Leti is running towards him, and he runs towards her, and they hug, and she is crying, and he is so happy to see her. And in the distance you can see a car where Leti has run from, and he looks at her. There's no words, and she looks at him, and eyes are full of tears, and she just gives him just a half a shake, and he knows what it means. He knows what it means, but still he walks back rushedly towards the vehicle where he can see two figures seemingly in the back of the vehicle, and he goes up, and he knows what Leti has implied with her looks and her tears and her emotions, but he needs to see for himself. He needs to see for himself, because this is the unthinkable. This is the unthinkable, that he would lose George, the only pillar of strength he's ever known in his life. Runs up to the back of the car and looks in the window, and he sees George there laid, and his daddy is holding George. George is laying, his body is laying in front of Montrose's body, and Montrose has got him there holding, but George is no more. George is gone. George has transitioned. He's given up the ghost, if you will, and Tick and Montrose is sitting there with his eyes full of tears brimming. They won't drop. They won't move. He's in shock. He's in shock. This is his brother. This is his pillar of strength as well, George. He's gone. If anybody deserved to die in this, it wasn't George. It wasn't George. And this is the look on Montrose's face, and Tick reaches out and grabs the door frame through the window, and out of his belly, and that grief popped up out of him like somebody had shook a Coke bottle, baby. And poof, it pops out of him. That is the acknowledgement, the moment that you see with eyes and connect with your spirit that they are no more. And it is a place of unbearable grief that pops out of your spirit. It's a moment, you guys. I know I'm putting it in this dramatic terms, but go back and watch when that bubble of grief pops up out of his throat. Go back and look at Montrose's face. I'm talking about, these people are acting. You hear what I tell you? And he reaches into the window, Tick does, and just touches a little bit of his uncle's leg and say, "I'm so sorry, Uncle George." He's thinking about what Christina said about, you brought them up here. You brought them up that road. Like I'm the reason that this happened to you. Okay? And scene. The show goes off. Okay, and the credits begin to roll, and the soundtrack begins to play, and it's this unbelievable moment. Like, what could have topped episode 1? Episode 2 topped episode 1. You guys, it was incredible. You guys tell me what you think about this episode. You guys, please put it down below. Let's talk about it. Let's converse about it. Christina was working black magic. I believe now, when I watch it the second time, I realized what she was telling him when she gave him that ring was, she was letting him know that, yeah, this is the plan my father has for you, but the smallest thing, which is that ring, I think that ring, it was a spell. There was a spell in this ring, and the more her daddy began to chant, the more that the spell began to be cast. I believe the spell in the ring is what turned her daddy to stone and them other men to stone. I believe Christina's plan all along was to bring to bring them all there, to bring Tick there. Yeah, under the guise of helping her father, but I think all along she was being resentful because her body, like Tick said, her daddy didn't care nothing about her, and like she was telling him, she really, although she wasn't a son, when she put that ring on him, she said, "This ring has been given to men who have done less than I have, but I can never achieve or hold the stature that they have." And that includes you. And he said, even though I'm a black man. And she was like, yeah, you a man nonetheless, and therefore superior over me in a sense. You will hold a place in these halls that I will never hold, no matter how much I do. And so I think she put a spell in that ring. And I think that that's the spell that caused her daddy to turn the stone. I think her father was onto something. I think it was about to happen. He was going to gain immortality, but she thwarted it. She thwarted it by giving him that ring, that small little piece that changed the trajectory of everything. But it also removed her daddy. It got rid of her daddy, who was the one that had shot George and could ultimately bring George back. But I don't think George is gone. We still got the rest of the season. I'm hoping George is not gone. So I think that ring had something to do with changing the plans of her father and changing Tick's destiny. I think Leti, like I said, is strong, but she is fragile. And we're going to learn a lot more about her. We see that Tick could be George's son or Montrose' son. Y'all tell me what you think. Y'all put it down below. He's a lot like George, but that may have everything to do with rearing and not anything at all to do with what his blood type is. But y'all, like I said, y'all tell me what you think. Put it down below. And until next time, honeybees. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I holla.